Hi folks, HR Funk here. Out on the range today to bring you the next in my series on law enforcement qualification course challenge videos. Now for any of you who don't know, what I'm attempting to do is to fire a law enforcement firearms qualification course from each of the 50 states. So far, I've completed 4 different courses for 4 different states, and today we'll make number 5. Today's course comes to us from the Hawkeye State of Iowa. The Iowa qualification course is divided into 5 stages that starts from a distance of 25 yards from the target, and through the progression of stages eventually moves up literally to an arm's length from the target. The Iowa course requires the shooter to fire 50 rounds, and in order to qualify, the shooter has to have a score at the end of 80%, which means 40 of those 50 rounds have to be in the scoring portion of the target. Speaking of the target, the Iowa course uses the FBI Q target, and I'm out of those, so what I did was took one of my Ohio targets back here and I modified it to meet the dimensions of the FBI target. Actually, the Ohio target from side to side in the preferred area is slightly narrower than the FBI target, but top to bottom it was longer. So I folded up the bottom, so now the length of this target is the same as the one used in Iowa, and this should suffice for a stand-in for the actual FBI Q target. By the way, I have more of those FBI targets on order, so it won't be long until they're in and I won't have to modify any more targets in order to use them in these videos. The challenger for today's video is my 1980 vintage Smith & Wesson Model 39-2, chambered for the 9mm Parabellum cartridge. I'm not expecting it to have any problems with this course. This has always been a very accurate and very reliable pistol for me, but I'm going to put it through its paces anyway, and we'll see how it does. Each stage of the Iowa course is timed, and I'm once again going to be keeping track of the time with my shot timer to make sure I come in under all the time limits. Also, just as I've done before, I'm going to give a description of what's about to take place at each stage before I start to shoot it, so you know what you're about to see. One last thing before I start, according to the information that I have, there are no special qualification categories at the end of the course. There's no expert or sharpshooter or anything like that. When a shooter finishes the course, he or she is either qualified or not, depending upon whether or not 80% of the shots that were fired are in that preferred area of the target. And here we go, folks. The first stage of fire in this Iowa course takes place from a distance of 25 yards, and it requires the shooter to fire from a position of cover behind a barricade. I start out in this stage standing, and on the signal to fire, I drop into a prone position and fire 3 rounds prone. Then I move to a kneeling position and fire 3 rounds from the kneeling position. Then I stand and fire 3 rounds from the standing position, all within a time limit of 45 seconds. So let's see how it goes. And I'm off to a little bit of a rough start on that one. I had 2 shots that were misses. The other 7 are all within the preferred area, so those are good. I'm still not in danger of failing to qualify, but those were definitely not good shots, and I didn't see the sights go on those either, so I'm not sure what happened there. In any regard, it's on to the next stage, and I'll see if I can redeem myself. And I'm set up for the next stage of this Iowa handgun qualification course. On this stage, I start at the 25-yard line, and on the signal to begin, I move to the 15-yard line. Once I arrive here, I draw and fire 2 rounds at the target standing, and then kneel down and fire 3 more rounds at the target from a kneeling position. From the time I get the signal to start, until the time I have fired out all 5 of those rounds. I have a time limit of 15 seconds. Now, since I can't pan the camera as I'm doing this, I'm going to start out off camera at the 25-yard line. You should hear the timer signal me to start. Then I'll move into the picture and finish the drill. So here we go. And there we go. The time on that drill was 14 seconds, well 14.57 seconds, so just over 14 and a half seconds. I was under the time limit. By the way, I don't think I mentioned it, the time on my first stage was 44 seconds or 44.30 seconds, so 44.3 seconds on that one. So far so good as far as the time limits go. Now there is a second drill that is fired from the 15-yard line. The shooting on this is identical to the drill that I just did, only instead of moving from the 25-yard line to the 15-yard line, I start at the 15-yard line with the pistol in my hand, and on the signal to fire, I have 8 seconds to fire 2 rounds into the target, and then kneel down and fire 3 more rounds into the target. Oh, had 1 shot over the time limit. So that's going to be 1 more that's not going to count toward qualification. And on to stage 3 of this Iowa handgun qualification course. This stage actually begins at the 15-yard line. On the signal to begin, I move to the 7-yard line, which is about where I'm standing now, draw and fire 6 rounds into the target. Then I perform a mandatory reload and fire 6 more rounds into the target, all in a time limit of 15 seconds. And I'm moving on to stage 5. Stage 5 starts at the 7-yard line, which is right here, and on the signal to begin, I move to the 5-yard line, which is literally 2 steps forward, and then I fire 5 rounds strong hand only into the target, perform a mandatory reload, for which I can use both hands, and then fires 5 rounds weak hand only into the target, all in a time limit of 15 seconds. Alright folks, 5th and final stage of the course. This one, as I said at the very beginning, starts out an arm's length from the target. So I'm going to be starting from this distance. On the signal to fire, I have to draw as I'm taking a half a step backward, come to a close quarter retention position, and fire 3 rounds into the target in a time limit of 3 seconds. Because I'm so close to the target, I'm not going to have my second camera trying to get the view of the bullets actually striking. I'm going to try to position this one so you can see the entire exercise along with the bullet strikes. And just to make sure that I'm playing fair on this exercise, I'm going to start each of the 3-shot strings with the pistol secured in the holster. So when I draw, I'm going to have to break the thumb snap, draw into the close quarter retention position, then I'll be firing the first shot double action. I'll decock after each 3-shot string. So the first shot will be double action, then the next 2 shots will be single action. And here's the tail of the target, folks. Of the 50 shots that I fired, 48 of them are inside the preferred area of the target. I had 2 shots that were off the target, so those are going to not count in my score. And I had 1 shot that was over the time limit back at 15 yards, so that won't count. So 47 of my 50 shots are in the preferred area of the target and under the time limit, so that gives me a percentage score of 94%, which is a qualifying score for the state of Iowa. As I said at the very beginning, a qualifying score is 80%. So this, as a 94%, is well above the qualifying score for the state. So it was an interesting course from the Hawkeye State. I had a little bit of a rough beginning back at 25 yards, but as I moved in closer to the target, I think I redeemed myself. I did have the 1 shot that was over the time limit. Now, as I've mentioned before, and I should probably repeat this again, I shoot these qualification courses cold. I don't come out and practice these for several days or a week and then make the video. I look through the course description, I decide which one I'm going to use, I go back, grab a firearm out of my safe, and I come out and I shoot the course. So that's why you see sometimes I don't have a real good feel for the time limits, or sometimes, like today, I actually throw a shot or 2. Even so, I'm well within the qualifying score, and again, it was fun, and I'm doing these mainly so we can look at the different qualification courses and contrast the different states and look at the different qualification standards, just to give everyone an idea of what type of standards law enforcement officers are held to with regard to their firearms training. One last thing before I go, folks. Thanks to my friends at Chevalier Advertising and Complete Target Solutions, or CTS, I now have a new target on the range. If you're interested, Complete Target Solutions has a full line of metal targets for all your shooting needs. Check out all their line at their website and see if they have anything that might work for you. But for now, I'm going to try this out. You know, before I do though, it seems like something's missing. I think I know what that is. Hold on just a second. Okay, now that's better. So the music is starting, and that means it's time for me to go. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. And until next time, good shooting. And I'm going to leave you with one last look at my nickeled Model 39.